The fluorescent lights of Davidson Technologies cafeteria buzzed overhead as I finished organizing the quarterly reports on my tablet. The company's annual Innovation Summit was starting in an hour, and as a mid-level project manager who'd been passed over for promotion twice, I wasn't exactly looking forward to another day of being invisible. This is your chance. Michael, my supervisor had said last week, the executive team will be there. Make an impression. Easy for her to say. In 3 years at Davidson, I'd watched colleagues with half my experience climb the ladder while my ideas gathered dust in shared folders nobody opened. I closed my tablet and unwrapped my lunch, a homemade turkey sandwich. I'd prepared that morning. As I took the first bite, I noticed a man standing at the entrance of the cafeteria, one hand gripping a white cane, the other feeling along the wall. He wore a simple grey suit that looked expensive despite its understated design. No one approached him. A few executives glanced his way, then quickly returned to their conversations about quarterly projections and market shares. I set my sandwich down and walked over. "Excuse me, sir. Can I help you find something?" The man turned toward my voice, his eyes hidden behind dark glasses. "I was told there would be food available before the summit, but I'm having trouble navigating the space." "I'd be happy to help. My name's Michael Parker." "James," he replied with a warm smile, extending his hand in my general direction. "James Wilson." I guided him to my table, describing the layout of the room as we walked. "The cafeteria's pretty crowded today because of the summit," I explained. "Not much food left either." James nodded. "I should have arrived earlier, but my flight was delayed. When we reached my table, I realized all the food stations had been cleared as staff prepared for the summit. James would go hungry unless, "Would you like half my sandwich? It's turkey with avocado. Nothing fancy, but it's fresh." James tilted his head, seemingly surprised by the offer. "That's extremely kind, but I couldn't take your lunch." "I insist." "I'm not that hungry anyway," I lied, my stomach quietly protesting. After a moment's hesitation, he accepted. As we ate, I learned he was in the tech industry too, though he was vague about specifics. He asked thoughtful questions about my work at Davidson, showing genuine interest in my ideas about improving our product ecosystem. "You seem to understand user experience on a fundamental level," he said after I explained my rejected proposal for our latest software release. "Try telling that to my bosses," I said, immediately regretting my candor. "Sorry, I shouldn't complain." "No, please. Honesty is refreshing. Tell me more about these ideas they've overlooked." Something about James made him easy to talk to. Maybe it was because he couldn't see my worn suit or my desk in the corner of the office. To him, I was just a voice, and my ideas mattered. I shared my vision for integrating our products more seamlessly, explaining how our current approach created unnecessary friction for users. James asked insightful questions that pushed me to elaborate in ways I hadn't considered before. "This is fascinating," he said when I finished. "Have you documented these ideas formally?" "Multiple times. They're sitting in our project management system gathering digital dust." James nodded thoughtfully. "Sometimes the right audience makes all the difference." The PA system crackled to life, announcing that the summit would begin in 15 minutes. People started migrating toward the main conference hall. "Would you mind guiding me to the event?" James asked. "I'd appreciate having someone describe what I'm missing visually." "Of course," I replied, surprised that he wanted my company. Most executives at Davidson barely acknowledged my existence. As we entered the grand hall, I described the elaborate stage setup, the rows of chairs arranged in perfect lines, and the massive screens displaying the company logo. The room hummed with anticipation as nearly 500 employees and guests found their seats. The front row has some empty seats. I told James, "That's usually reserved for VIPs. Would you join me there?" he asked. I hesitated. "Those aren't for people at my level." "Please," James insisted. "I'd value having you explain what's happening on stage." Against my better judgment, I led him to the front row. I could feel my supervisor's eyes burning into my back from somewhere in the middle section. CEO Richard Davidson himself approached our row, flanked by his executive team. He glanced at me with momentary confusion before his eyes locked on James. "Mr. Wilson," Davidson said, extending his hand. "We're honored you could make it." James stood, somehow sensing Davidson's presence. "The honor is mine, Richard." I froze. They knew each other. Who exactly had I been sharing my lunch and company complaints with? "Ladies and gentlemen," the event coordinator announced from the stage, "please take your seats. We're about to begin." Davidson and his entourage sat in the reserved seats beside us. Davidson leaned over to James and whispered something I couldn't hear. The lights dimmed, and the company's standard promotional video began playing on the screens. I leaned closer to James, quietly describing the visual elements as promised. "Thank you, Michael," he whispered. "For this and for lunch, I won't forget your kindness. It was just half a sandwich," I replied. James smiled. Sometimes the smallest gestures reveal the most about a person's character. The video ended, and Davidson took the stage to thunderous applause. "Welcome to our annual Innovation Summit," he began. "This year is special because we have big news to share with you all. But first, I'd like to introduce someone many of you have heard of, but few have met. Please welcome to the stage James Wilson, founder of Wilson Innovations." My heart stopped. Wilson Innovations was one of the most successful technology investment firms in the country. They had transformed countless startups into industry leaders. James stood, unfolded his cane, and made his way to the stage with practiced confidence. Davidson offered his arm for the last few steps. Taking the microphone, James surveyed the silent audience with unseeing eyes. "Thank you, Richard. Before I share our announcement, I want to tell you about my experience arriving at Davidson Technologies today." "When I arrived at your company today," James continued, his voice carrying effortlessly through the silent hall, "I stood lost in your cafeteria. Dozens of Davidson employees walked past me. Some stared. Others pretended not to notice. All of them too busy to help a blind man find lunch. I sank lower in my seat, uncomfortable with where this might be heading. "All except one person," James said. "A project manager named Michael Parker not only guided me, but shared his own lunch without hesitation. 500 heads turned in my direction. My face burned as Davidson and his executive team stared at me with newfound interest. What Michael didn't know," James continued, "is that I've spent the past month evaluating Davidson Technologies, not just its products and financials, but its people and culture. The heart of any company isn't its technology. It's the character of those who create it." James paused, his unseeing gaze seeming to find me in the crowd, which brings me to our announcement. Wilson Innovations has acquired a majority stake in Davidson Technologies, effective immediately. Gasps rippled through the audience. On stage, Davidson maintained a practiced smile, but the tension in his shoulders was visible. "This partnership," James explained, "will allow Davidson to reach its full potential. But achieving that will require changes, starting with how we recognize talent and ideas." My supervisor was now openly staring at me, her expression unreadable. Innovation doesn't just come from corner offices. It comes from people at every level who care deeply about improving user experiences. People who see problems clearly and imagine solutions others miss. James set his cane against the podium and leaned forward. "Richard and I have agreed that as part of this transition, we'll be establishing an innovation incubator team with direct reporting lines to senior leadership. This team will identify and develop promising ideas that might otherwise go unnoticed in traditional management structures." Davidson nodded stiffly beside him. "And I'm pleased to announce that Michael Parker will lead this initiative." The room fell silent. I couldn't breathe. Was this really happening? "Michael doesn't know this yet," James added with a smile, but during lunch he unknowingly gave the most impressive interview of his career. His insights about Davidson's product ecosystem revealed exactly the kind of thinking this company needs more of. After the presentation, I found myself surrounded by executives who'd never given me the time of day. They shook my hand, congratulated me, asked about my relationship with James Wilson. There's no relationship, I told them honestly. I just offered him half a sandwich. Later, James found me by the refreshment table, somehow navigating the crowded room with remarkable precision. I hope I didn't overwhelm you. Michael, he said. Just a bit, I admitted. This morning I was a project manager with rejected proposals. Now I'm leading an innovation team. You were always capable of leading, James replied. You just needed someone to notice. But why me? Surely there are more qualified... When I lost my sight 12 years ago, James interrupted gently, I learned to evaluate people differently. Without visual distractions, appearances, corner offices, expensive watches, you hear what truly matters. How people think, how they solve problems, how they treat others when they believe they have nothing to gain. He sipped his water. Davidson has talented engineers, but many companies do. What they've lacked is someone who sees beyond technical specifications to the human experience. That's you, Michael. I'm not sure I'm ready for this responsibility. The best leaders are those who doubt their readiness, James said. Your first assignment is simple. Dig out those proposals gathering digital dust. I want detailed presentations next week. 2 months later, our first project launched under my leadership. A reimagined user interface incorporating ideas I'd proposed years earlier. Customer satisfaction scores increased by 37% within weeks. Richard Davidson, who initially regarded my promotion with skepticism, began stopping by my new office regularly to discuss upcoming releases. The executives who had ignored me now invited me to strategy meetings, sometimes actually listening. On the anniversary of that fateful summit, James invited me to dinner at an upscale restaurant downtown. As we were seated, he handed me an envelope. What's this? I asked. Open it, he said. Inside was a profit report for my first implemented project. The numbers were staggering. Your ideas increased revenue by $22 million in the first year, James said. Not bad for proposals that were gathering digital dust. I stared at the paper, speechless. I've evaluated hundreds of companies throughout my career, James continued. The most common failure isn't technology. It's overlooking talent that doesn't fit conventional expectations. The day we met, I found what I was looking for at Davidson. Half a sandwich changed my life, I said, still amazed by how everything had unfolded. James smiled. The sandwich was just lunch, Michael. What changed your life was that you saw someone in need when others looked away. You shared what you had without expectation of return. Those actions revealed your character. He raised his glass. To seeing what others miss, whether it's the potential in people or the flaws in a user interface. I raised my glass in return, thinking about how a simple act of kindness had transformed not just my career, but an entire company. In helping James navigate a cafeteria, I'd found my own path forward. That day taught me the most valuable lesson of my career. Success isn't just about technical skills or business acumen. Sometimes it's about recognizing the humanity in others and offering half your sandwich when someone is hungry. 1 year into my role as Innovation Incubator team leader, I'd built a department that had become the envy of our competitors. We'd launched 3 groundbreaking products, and my team had grown from just me to 15 of Davidson's brightest minds, many plucked from obscurity, as I had been. James visited quarterly, always taking time to sit with each team member individually. Unlike other executives who demanded formal presentations, he preferred conversations over coffee, asking thoughtful questions and listening intently. During his spring visit, James and I walked through the new innovation lab we'd built on the previously unused 8th floor. You've transformed this space, he remarked, trailing his fingers along the modular workstations. It feels different from the rest of the building. We removed the cubicles and private offices, I explained. Everyone works together regardless of title. James nodded approvingly. And that display wall I'm hearing? Multiple screens, 6 interactive displays. We call it the fishbowl. Any employee can submit ideas there anonymously. The good ones rise to the top, through peer voting, implementing democracy in a corporate structure, James mused. Bold move. As we continued our tour, James suddenly asked, "Are you happy, Michael?" The question caught me off guard. Of course. Why wouldn't I be? Your voice changes when you're discussing administrative work versus creative solutions. You've become an excellent leader, but I wonder if management is pulling you away from what you truly love. He was right. While I enjoyed nurturing my team, bureaucracy consumed most of my days. My own ideas remained undeveloped as I championed others. I miss creating, I admitted. But that's the price of advancement, isn't it? Before James could respond, Davidson himself appeared at the lab entrance, his expression unusually tense. "There you are," he said to James. "We have a situation." James sensed the urgency. "Michael, would you excuse us?" I returned to my office, but curiosity led me to check our stock price, down nearly 20%. Something was very wrong. That evening, as most employees headed home, my office phone rang. "Michael, it's James. Could you come to the executive boardroom?" When I arrived, I found James and Davidson seated with 3 people I didn't recognize. Legal pads and laptops covered the table. "Michael," Davidson began, uncharacteristically subdued, "we're facing a crisis. WorldSync Technologies has filed a patent infringement lawsuit against us concerning our newest platform." My stomach dropped. WorldSync was our largest competitor, and their CEO, Victor Mercer, had a reputation for aggressive litigation to crush smaller rivals. They're claiming their pending patent covers core elements of our system, Davidson continued. They're seeking an injunction to halt our sales while demanding $200 million in damages. That would cripple us, I said. Precisely their intention, James added. Victor Mercer has been trying to acquire Davidson for years. This is his way of forcing our hand. Why am I here? I asked. This seems above my pay grade. James turned to me. Because you developed the architecture they're claiming infringes their patent. We need to understand exactly how your system works to mount our defense. For the next 3 hours, I walked them through every aspect of my design. The lawyers took copious notes, occasionally exchanging worried glances. When I finished, the lead attorney sighed. Their claim has merit. Their patent application predates our product launch by 3 weeks. But that's impossible, I protested. I developed this concept 3 years ago. It's in my original proposals. Davidson shifted uncomfortably. Those proposals were never officially documented in our IP system. The realization hit me like a physical blow. My ideas, rejected and forgotten by management, now threatened the company's existence because no one had bothered to protect them. Actually, I said slowly, they were documented. I pulled out my phone and opened my personal cloud storage. I submitted everything through proper channels, but when nothing happened, I forwarded the submissions to my personal email for safekeeping. The timestamps and server logs are intact. I handed my phone to the lead attorney, who scrolled through the emails with widening eyes. These predate WorldSync's patent application by years, she said. With this evidence, we could not only defeat their claim, but potentially countersue for patent infringement if they've implemented similar technology. Davidson stared at me. You saved these all this time. When you believe in something, you keep records, I replied simply. James smiled. Michael, you may have just saved Davidson Technologies. The next morning, our legal team submitted my documentation to the court. By afternoon, WorldSync's stock had plummeted on news of our countersuit. 2 days later, my office phone rang again. Michael Parker. The voice was unfamiliar. Speaking. This is Victor Mercer of WorldSync Technologies. I nearly dropped the phone. Mr. Mercer, this is unexpected. I'll be brief. Your documentation has created complications for us. I'm prepared to offer you personally twice your annual salary to state that you backdated those submissions. My pulse quickened. You're asking me to lie. I'm offering you an opportunity. 7 figures, Mr. Parker, think about it. I thought about my years struggling for recognition, about the apartment I still couldn't afford to upgrade, about the student loans I was still paying off at 40, Mr. Mercer, I said finally. I appreciate your directness, so I'll be equally direct. I'm recording this conversation, which will now be submitted to our legal team as evidence of attempted witness tampering. There was silence, then a soft chuckle. You're either very brave or very foolish, Mr. Parker. I'm neither. I'm just someone who believes good work speaks for itself. Eventually, after hanging up, I immediately called James to report the conversation. His response was immediate. We're accelerating our countersuit. 3 weeks later, World Sync withdrew their claim and approached us for settlement discussions. The innovation that might have destroyed Davidson was now its most valuable asset. As James and I left the final settlement meeting, he asked, "Did you ever consider Mercer's offer?" I hesitated, then decided on honesty. For about 3 seconds. Why only 3? Because some things aren't for sale, I replied. The truth is one of them. James nodded thoughtfully as we walked toward his waiting car. You know, Michael, I've been thinking about our conversation before this crisis began, about how administration was pulling you away from creation. What about it? I have a proposition for you, one that might solve that problem. James's proposition was bold, establishing a new division within Wilson Innovations, dedicated to identifying overlooked talent and ideas within their portfolio companies. I would lead it with complete autonomy, reporting directly to James. Think of it as talent arbitrage, he explained. Finding undervalued human assets the same way we find undervalued companies. It was the opportunity of a lifetime, but I hesitated. What about my team here? They'll continue your work at Davidson, James assured me. You've built something sustainable. Now you can replicate that model across dozens of companies. After careful consideration, I accepted. My final act at Davidson was promoting Angela Chen, a brilliant engineer whose ideas I'd championed from my team, to replace me. Like me, she'd been overlooked before I discovered her redesigning our entire back-end architecture in her spare time. Remember, I told her during our transition, the best ideas rarely come from the corner offices, she smiled. I learned that from you. 6 months into my new role, I'd already identified 17 employees across 12 companies whose ideas had transformative potential. We created a specialized incubator program, giving these innovators resources to develop their concepts without leaving their companies. One Tuesday morning, I received an unexpected call from James. Michael, I need you in Chicago tomorrow. Back for 2 days. What's happening in Chicago? Victor Mercer is selling World Sync Technologies. We're among the potential buyers. I nearly choked on my coffee. You're buying World Sync? After they tried to destroy Davidson? Business isn't personal, James replied. Their technology portfolio is valuable, despite Mercer's tactics. I want your assessment of their innovation team before we make an offer. The next day, I found myself in World Sync's gleaming headquarters, accompanying James to meetings with their executive team. Victor Mercer greeted us with practiced cordiality, though his eyes hardened when he recognized me. Mr. Parker, unexpected to see you here. Mr. Mercer? I nodded politely. For hours, World Sync executives presented their technology roadmap, financial projections, and organizational structure. When they finished, James thanked them and made an unusual request. Before we continue, I'd like Mr. Parker to speak with some of your development staff without management present. Mercer's smile tightened. That's highly irregular. So is my investment approach, James replied calmly. Take it or leave it. Reluctantly, Mercer arranged for me to use a conference room. One by one, engineers and designers came to speak with me. Most were guarded, clearly coached on what to say. But the 7th interview changed everything. Sarah Liang, a quiet systems architect, hesitantly shared how her integration proposals had been repeatedly shelved despite addressing critical flaws in WorldSync's platform, the very flaws that had led Mercer to target Davidson's superior solution. I've been documenting everything, she whispered, sliding a flash drive across the table. I can't prove they stole my work, but the timestamps match. That evening in our hotel, James listened intently as I summarized my findings. WorldSync has incredible talent they're squandering, I concluded. Sarah Liang alone has developed solutions that could transform their entire product line. But Mercer's leadership team is systematically suppressing innovation from lower ranks. James nodded thoughtfully. So your recommendation? Don't buy WorldSync, I said firmly. Buy their talent. 2 weeks later, Wilson Innovations announced it was walking away from the WorldSync acquisition. The stock plummeted. 1 month after that, we launched a recruiting initiative targeting their key technical staff, offering equity packages and creative autonomy. Sarah Liang was our first hire, along with 11 others from WorldSync's engineering department. Within 6 months, WorldSync's market value had decreased by 40%, while our newly formed division filed 23 patents based on ideas these employees had previously been unable to implement. Victor. Mercer was ousted as CEO by his board of directors on the 1-year anniversary of my move to Wilson Innovations. James invited me to dinner at the same upscale restaurant where we'd celebrated my success at Davidson. I have something for you, he said, sliding an envelope across the table. Inside was a company ID card with my name and a new title, Chief Innovation Officer. Wilson Innovations. The board approved it this morning, James explained. You'll oversee innovation strategy across our entire portfolio. I stared at the card, momentarily speechless. I don't know what to say. Your results speak for themselves, James replied. The talent arbitrage program has already generated returns 10 times our investment. It's not just about returns, I said. It's about creating environments where good ideas aren't lost because of who proposed them. James smiled. Which brings me to the second part of your new role. We're establishing the Parker Foundation for Innovation Equity, a non-profit arm that will help underrepresented entrepreneurs develop and protect their intellectual property. I looked up in surprise. You're naming it after me. Who better? Your journey exemplifies everything the foundation stands for. As we finished dinner, I reflected on how far I'd come from that cafeteria 3 years ago. It's strange to think all this began with half a sandwich. No, James corrected gently. It began with recognizing someone's humanity when others saw only a disruption. That moment revealed who you truly are, Michael. Everything since has simply confirmed it. On my way home, I detoured past Davidson Technologies. Through the lobby windows, I could see Angela's innovation lab had expanded to the entire first floor. The fishbowl concept had grown into a massive digital wall where employees gathered, discussing ideas regardless of title or tenure. I smiled, knowing that somewhere in that building, another overlooked employee with brilliant ideas was finally being heard, perhaps sharing half their sandwich with someone who needed it, unaware that small acts of kindness can change everything. Some might call my journey luck, but I know better. In a world fixated on appearances and credentials, the simple willingness to see beyond titles, to recognize the inherent value in every person, isn't just good humanity. It's the most powerful innovation strategy of all.